Narottama Das Thakura says, please be merciful to me. You are so magnanimous because you have seen the fallen souls of this age. You are very compassionate to them, but you should know also that I am the most fallen. No one is more greatly fallen than me. Patita Pavada Hetu Tavaravatara. Your incarnation is just to reclaim the conditioned fallen souls, but I assure you that you will not find the greater fallen soul than me. Therefore, my claim is first. And he prays Lord Nityananda. He says, Aha, Prabhu Nityananda, Premananda Sukhi. My dear Lord Nityananda, you're always joyful in spiritual bliss. Since you always appear very happy, I've come to you because I'm most unhappy. If you kindly put your glance over me, I also may become happy. Then he prays to Dvaita Prabhu, Doya Koro Sita Patiya Dvaita Goshai. Dvaita Prabhu's wife's name was Sita, therefore he is sometimes addressed as Sita Pati. Thus Narottama Das Thakura prays, my dear Dvaita Prabhu, husband of Sita, you are so kind. Please be kind to me. If you are kind to me, naturally, Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda will also be kind to me. Actually, Dvaita Prabhu invited Lord Chaitanya to come down. When the Dvaita Prabhu saw that the fallen souls were engaged simply in sense gratificatory processes, not understanding Krishna consciousness, he felt very much compassionate towards the fallen souls, and he also felt himself incapable of claiming them all. He therefore prayed to Lord Krishna, please come yourself. Without your personal presence, it is not possible to deliver these fallen souls. Thus, by his invitation, Lord Chaitanya appeared. Naturally, Narottama Das Thakura prays to Dvaita Prabhu, if you will be kind to me, naturally Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda also will be kind to me. Then he prays to the Goswamis, Ha Swarup Sanatan Rupa Raghunath. Swarup refers to Swarup Damodar, the personal secretary of Lord Chaitanya. He was always engaged with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and immediately arranged for whatever Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted. Two personal attendants, Swarup Damodar and Govinda, were always constantly with Lord Chaitanya. Therefore, Narottama Das Thakura also prays to Swarup Damodar and then to the 6 Goswamis, the next disciples of Lord Chaitanya, Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Sanatan Goswami, Sri Bhatta Raghunath Goswami, Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, and Sri Raghunath Das Goswami. These 6 Goswamis were directly instructed by Lord Chaitanya to spread this movement of Krishna consciousness. Narottama Das Thakura also prays for their mercy. After the 6 Goswamis, the next Acharya was Srinivasa Acharya. Actually, Narottama Das Thakura was in disciplic succession after Srinivasa Acharya and was almost his contemporary, and Narottama Das's personal friend was Ramachandra Chakravarti. Therefore he prays, always desire the company of Ramachandra. He desires a devotee's company. The whole process is that we should always pray for the mercy of the superior acharyas and keep company with pure devotees. Then it will be easier for us to advance in Krishna consciousness and receive the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, Lord Krishna. This is the sum and substance of this song sung by Narottama Das. Narottama Das ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. feel happy if I got that the leg turned back. I'm exposed with my mobile phone here. I'll hide it behind here. Oh, it's Narottama Dasa's appearance day today. It's actually a great privilege to speak about Narottama because it's just glorifying such a saint as him as very purificatory, but there's a personal connection with Narottama that we all feel actually, because he came after Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and he enlivened all the Vaishnavas around India by his preaching. So we're following in the move Narottama. It can be said that Narottama Das, he helped to revive Lord Chaitanya's mission by uniting the preaching movement. So Lord Chaitanya, he was born in 1486 and he spread Krishna consciousness all throughout India, particularly in the southern part of India, and he sent the Goswamis to Vrindavan to research all the holy places and to document Krishna's pastimes. But then he passed away in 1534. And after that there was a profound sadness amongst all the Vaishnavas. They felt bereft of the association, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Of course, the Goswamis kept writing prolific literatures in Vrindavan, but the devotees of Bengal, they felt that great separation, that they felt that they couldn't do anything somehow or other. They felt helpless. So at one point in time when Lord Chaitanya was preaching throughout southern India, so in his early years as a sannyasi, he toured all over India, and one time he came to this area of northern Bengal. It was called Kutubdir, and there was a certain sacred river there called the Padmavati River, and he was bathing by the waters of the Padmavati River, and he kept crying out, Narottama, Narottama, Narottama. And Lord Nityananda, who was with him, he said, what are you saying? What is this? What is this Narottama? And Lord Chaitanya said that I'm crying tears of love for Narottama, just when you yourself were in Jagannath Puri, and we're crying and weeping in front of Lord Jagannath because we're seeing the beauty of Krishna in Lord Jagannath's face. Then I've kept all those tears and I'm saving them for Narottama, this great devotee who's going to take birth here in the future. And I'm going to store this like a treasure house. All my bhakti, shakti there, I will put into this river Padmavati. And he addressed the Padmavati river in that spot. He said, take my love and keep it here. When Narottama comes, you give it to him. So then the river spoke to Lord Chaitanya and said, how will I know when Narottama Das comes? How can I tell? He said that when he touches you, you will flood. You will float over, and then you know that that's Narottama and you give him that love. So that spot now is called Prematali. I don't know if anybody's been there. No, it's a very auspicious spot. Padmavati River. So consequently, it's said that in the middle of the 1500s, maybe about 20 to 30 years after Lord Chaitanya disappeared, then Narottama was born in the full moon in the month of Magh. Who knows when that is? It's today. Trick question. Okay, so he was born of the parents of, he was the son of Raj Krishna Das Datta, and his wife's name was Narayani, I just can't remember, but Krishna, his father was a very, very wealthy zamindar. That means they have kings in their system there, so he was king of the area, so he had very vast amounts of wealth, and he only had one son. He had Narottama. So he also, Narottama, this is very important, that Narottama had an uncle, Krishna Dasa's brother, Purushottam, and then Purushottam had a son, Santosh. So that was Narottama's cousin, right? So Narottama, he grew up in a very sheltered life. Oh, by the way, that this king, this Zamindar, according to the structure of the Varna ashram, is classed as a kayasta because he was a money-making person. So he was regarded as a Vaishya. This is very important because people were classified very strictly in those days. It's not so strict now, but that is still going on. So from childhood, Narottama just showed this astute aptitude for learning, and particularly this unfathomable attraction of hearing about the pastimes of Krishna. He said that he grew like the moon grows into the full moon. He just blossomed, and he was protected very much by his father because he was a heir to the great fortune that his father amassed, and he wanted someone to take over from him. So he led a sheltered life, but somewhere along the line that Narottama, he listened to this great sage who started to preach about the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, and immediately became attracted. So we see a parallel, sometimes as a crossover. I get confused between Raghunath Das and Narottama. It's the same sort of situation. They're very sheltered and protected by their father. So then, when Narottama was growing up, Lord Nityananda appeared to him in a dream, and he said, "You have so much treasure waiting for you at the river Padmavati. You go and take a bath in the river." But somehow or other, his father got wind of the fact that if Narottama went to the river Padmavati, there was going to be some big catastrophe there, like the river was going to flood. So he was thinking in terms of that. So he thought, oh, my son will be in danger. So he protected for him, for his own sake, don't go to the river Padmavati. So he had all his guards protecting him from stopping him from going to the river, which was probably a short distance away somewhere. And eventually, when he was 12 years old, he managed to evade security and go to the river, and he dipped his toe in the river, and immediately the river flooded over and then delivered all the prema bhakti that Lord Chaitanya had saved for him. So from that moment, he was just transformed into this effulgent, saintly person, and he could no longer look at life in the way that he used to in any shape or form. And he became a renunciate at that early age, and all he could think of from that point in time was, I want to go to Vrindavan, I just want to escape and live in Vrindavan. So, like Raghunath Das Goswami, found this opportunity to escape. He made a run for it. He fled into the forest, Bengal. You've heard of Bengal tigers, haven't you? Right, well, they come from Bengal, in that forest. So he's making his way through the forest, oblivious of anything except the nectar of going to the holy Dham. It just preoccupied his mind. Said that he even forgot to eat, and he just kept going. When he was exhausted, he'd take rest. He'd been cut by all the bushes because he's following some off-beaten paths. And his father became totally distressed when he found out his son had left, and he sent all the security guards and agents all over Bengal, find him quickly, bring him back. So even though Narottama was deep in the jungle, he was found. The security guards or the agents said, "Oh, you have to come back now." But Narottama was just such a saintly person. He said, "What's the use of me coming back? I'm totally devoid of any sense of responsibility or attraction to any wealth whatsoever." And he convinced the agents to let him go. Not only that, they gave him some money to keep him alive. So he kept going towards Vrindavan. He visited a few holy places, and he was in so much ecstasy. Sometimes he just collapsed under the tree when it felt like the time to sleep. In one dream, he dreamt once that this golden Brahmin in beautiful robes came and gave him some milk to drink. And he said, "You drink this milk and all your bruises and cuts will go away." And then he had another dream where he dreamt of Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami were holding him up. He said, "Drink this milk, drink this milk." And he woke up and he was refreshed and totally blissed out. So he actually went to Vrindavan. He arrived there. And another dream, Lord Chaitanya kept tabs on Narottama. In his dreams, he told Narottama to actually take shelter of Lokanath Maharaj and ask him to become your spiritual master. It is actually said that Narottama was Champaka Gopi in his last life, and he was a servant of Rupa Manjari. So we know who Rupa Manjari is. Who is Rupa Manjari? Rupa Goswami? Yeah. So he was a servant of the intimate gopis of Krishna, so he'd taken birth again here. That's why Lord Chaitanya was calling out for him. So he arrived in Vrindavan and he searched out Lokanath. By that time in Vrindavan, it was like 30 years after Lord Chaitanya disappeared. The Goswamis had gone, all the great acharyas had gone. He sang a song of lamentation, Ye Anila Premandana, which is in the songbook. He was a famous songwriter. He wrote in this absolutely divine meters, and he had his own style. I forget what the style was, Tulsi might know, I don't remember. So he sang how he felt the separation of the Goswamis, he felt separation of Advaita, Acharya, Nityananda, all these great saints. What's he going to do? Just simply weeps, and just all he can do is simply weep. So there was one Goswami left in Vrindavan when he arrived. Do you know who that was? You do? Yeah, okay, thanks. Huh? No, Jiva Goswami. Stumped the champions here. Set me up. So it was Jiva Goswami, his 1/6 Goswami, he was still there, and Lokanath Maharaj was still there too. He was an associate of Lord Chaitanya, and he'd never ever taken a disciple before, and Narottama was instructed to, to ask Lokanath for initiation, spiritual, becoming spiritual master. Loka says, "No, I can't do that. I've never accepted devotees. I'm too fallen. I just can't look up. And me, I'm so old now. I just don't have time to look after any disciples. I'm sorry. And look at you. You're the son of a wealthy king. You're high class. I'm just a poor beggar. What are you saying? There's no way I can take you as a disciple." So Narottama is in a dilemma. He's completely overwhelmed. How is this? Lord Chaitanya told me to take shelter of, my spiritual master, but he didn't want to disturb his mind. So he just waited and he looked at what Lokanath Maharaj did, and Lokanath would never accept service even. Not only did he not have disciples, he did not take any service from anyone, so there was no window of opportunity where he could serve him. But he noticed that Lokanath Maharaj, when in the mornings he would go and relieve himself in a certain place, which was the usual style in Vrindavan. All sadhus had a place where they would relieve themselves. So Narottama, would go and clean that place up gleefully, with great joy, clean it, purify it, make it fragrant, leave some leaves, and have it ready for the next day. So this was going on, and Lokanath Maharaj became really curious. What is happening here that this place is so clean? Someone is doing this. What's going on? And then he hid there. One day he got up early and he hid behind, see, who's cleaning this place after me? And he saw that Narottama Dasa at midnight got up and he had the broom stashed and he's singing and tears are coming out his eyes. "I'm cleaning up for my spiritual master." "What are you doing? Why are you doing this? You're such an elevated soul. because already, Lord Chaitanya's appeared to you in your dreams, and now I'm being embarrassed that you're cleaning after me. So at that point in time, Narottama again asked for initiation and said, oh, well, very well, okay, go and take a bath in the river and I'll initiate you. So Narottama Das was the only one disciple that Lokanath Maharaj ever made. And Narottama was in Vrindavan, and he was studying from Jiva Goswami, who was the first and foremost leader of the Vaishnava community. And Jiva did so much. He organised everything, he bought land, he made sure that all the sadhus were settled. It actually became an organised, he organised Vaishnavism in such a way that it would actually stay solid. So he was also preaching Srimad Bhagavatam and the philosophy. So there were three next wave. It's called, there's waves that we talk about first, second, third generation ourselves. And we're up to, which generation are we up to now? Fourth generation, 50 years. So the next generation, and Narottama was one of them, and he had two good associates there, two very close associates. Can you tell me their names? Anyone know? You can tell me, anyone else? Shyamananda, yes. Shyamananda Pandit, I could speak for half an hour about Shyamananda, how he got the mercy of Radharani. These were special people. And also Srinivas Acharya. And Srinivas was the next Acharya after Lokanath. They were all great souls. So Jiva Goswami and Lokanath Maharaj, they told these three young students that you should go back to Bengal and help the Vaishnavas there. They're really struggling, right? So they compiled a cartload of books, all the beautiful books that have been written by the Goswamis that we're reading, so many names, so many wonderful literatures. And then they proceeded to take that cartload to Bengal. And somewhere along the way to Bengal, they went to sleep one night and woke up in the morning and the cart was gone, stolen, right? There was great distress there. What happened to the cart full of books? And Srinivas, who sort of thought it through, he said, let me trace this down. I'll see if I can find them. And because Lokanath Maharaj had told Narottama to go back to where you came from, northern Bengal, and spread the glories of Vaishnavism there, you just keep going on your way. Of course, just as a bit of a sidetrack, Srinivas sort of made a few inquiries and he found that the king had a few sus type of associates there, like then he was... it might have been the king that took him. So it was the king actually, because he heard that there was a great treasure passing through the province. So he got his dacoit friends, sort of what you call a very subversive sort of associates, subversive associates, to pinch the cart. So they took it to the king's place and there it was. And actually, I heard this from Prabhupada, this is in the early days, I haven't heard it repeated since, that when they loaded the cart, they had the Bhagavatams on top, right? And all the literatures, and the Bhagavatam was on top. So when Srinivas found the cart, he actually looked through literatures and the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita was on top, right? So that just goes, that, it just shows the fact that the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita is the topmost of all literatures. This is the point that Prabhupada made. So then the king, when he received the association of Srinivas Acharya, he became very enthused about Vaishnavism and he became a devotee. And as a service, in apology for taking the cart, he got all his scribes, all his pundits to copy these literatures. So this is the first time that we had mass printing of the books, but they had to be written by hand. So he got all his scribes. So then there were lots of copies, or dozens of copies, that was lots in those days, to be distributed throughout Bengal. So this was going on. In the meantime, Narottama went back to his village of what was the village's name? Kachuri, yeah. And he hadn't been there for quite a number of years, and he'd found that his father had passed away, and his uncle passed away, and his cousin was there, Shantos, and he was the chief of the village, and Shantos was just so overjoyed to see him, as were all the inhabitants. And he said, what's yours is mine. And so after extensively going around all the areas and preaching to all the Vaishnavas, Narottama decided to have this big festival. And he said, let's invite all the Vaishnavas and unite them and have a really big Sangha. So Shantos says the treasury is open, you can do what you like with it. So first of all, he got these beautiful invitations, and he got messengers to go to Jagannath Puri, to Vrindavan, all over India, and invite people to this huge festival in Kachuri. And in preparation for all the people who were coming, and it's a list of so many names that make your hair stand on end, all these great Vaishnavas that were still left over from Chaitanya era. The greatest of all the Vaishnavas that came was Janavi Mata, the wife of Lord Nityananda. She was considered to be the first and foremost Vaishnava Acharya in that assembly there at that point in time. And to facilitate the Vaishnavas, he built these huge boats to take them over the river Padmavati to Kachuri, and he built all these wonderful huts, and he had stacks and stacks of prasadam, big storehouses of prasadam there. So when all the Vaishnavas started to come, then everybody would be looked after. So this was the first festival that the Vaishnavas actually ever celebrated, the United Vaishnavas. Of course, Srila Prabhupada, in the mood of Narottama Das Thakur, when he opened up Mayapur and Vrindavan, he also said that all the Vaishnavas from all over the world should come and celebrate this festival. And this went on for about 10 years. The first festival was in 1973. I hear reports about it. It was pretty austere. Everybody got Delhi belly in Vrindavan, and, it was very austere. 74, 75, the Australian devotees started to go there. My first experience was in 1978. And we were looked after very nicely. We went to Vrindavan, and then we went to Mayapur, and we took over a whole plane. Actually, when the plane was flying to India, we chanted Namaste Narsimhaya on the plane, and the whole plane was vibrating with the sound of the Sringadeva's holy names. I don't think we could get away with it these days, but it was really good fun then. And then we bring out little hampers. No, we don't want your food here. We got our own. We're eating samosas and tucking into kachoris and burfi and everything. So we're all prepared. So it was real fun. So ultimately, I think the festival's still going on, but the movement has expanded so much that it's sort of, we have so many members that if everybody came to the festival at one time, it would just completely be inundated, the place would be inundated. But we still see devotees flying in and out for the festivals. So Janavi Mata arrived, and all the devotees began to arrive, and she immediately started cooking for everybody. She was the Acharya. And she said, where's the kitchens, right? So she immediately started all the preparations, and she would serve the Vaishnavas herself. And it just started increasing, and all the kirtans started to get louder and more joyous. And Narottama, he was the officiating priest. So the highlight was the initiation of the deities. There were 6 deities that were to be initiated that he'd arranged. That he'd found one deity in the grain place that was there for so many years, because that grain place had so many snakes in it that everybody was too scared to go there. But Narottama went in there, and all the snakes just immediately slithered away, and then he found the deities there. So there were 6 sets of deities. There's a big ceremony, and just as a postscript to that, one of the deities went to Vrindavan. And Indradumna Maharaj knew that these deities were in Vrindavan, but nobody knew where. So he kept it on the back of his mind. He kept asking around, anybody seen these deities? Narottama, I forget what the name of the deities are. Sort of hard. So anyway, he found them. He found them about 5 or 6 years ago. And fortunately, we were able to go on a pilgrimage and see these deities in Vrindavan that Narottama Das installed. So they're on the pilgrimage track now, on the pilgrimage side. If you go to Vrindavan, you can visit these deities. So it's sort of like a direct contact with Narottama. So after the ceremony, initiation ceremony, they had this huge kirtan, and then in the middle, kirtan stopped, and Narottama started to sing in this beautiful voice. That his voice was just heavenly, and he had his own way of chanting, his own meters, and everybody started to chant with Narottama, and they're all crying in ecstasy, and everybody was completely absorbed. And at that point in time, it was so sweet that he was actually calling Lord Chaitanya, and his singing was so attractive that the Panchatattva appeared. Even though Lord Chaitanya had been missing for 30 years, he'd left the planet 30 years ago, all of a sudden, there's the Panchatattva, there's Lord Chaitanya, there's Lord Nityananda, there's Advaita, there's Gadadhara and Srivas, and they're all dancing with everybody, and everybody's dancing in ecstasy, crying and laughing. And so all the relatives there of Advaita and Nityananda, they see their maternal grandfather, maternal father there. So for hours this went on and on, the chanting, and then eventually it had to be that, the Panchatattva disappeared again. So everybody fell flat on their face, all crying in separation. Well, what has happened? We've just seen Lord Chaitanya, now we've lost him again. So Janava Mata had the solution. She cooked this huge feast, huge, wonderful feast. Immediately they brought out the food, and everybody started eating away, and everybody fell into ecstasy again, eating this Mahaprasad. And so when the festival finished, they all got presents and gifts and everything, and everybody went back to their own abodes, wherever they were. And that enthusiasm was endemic, that Vaishnavism was very much alive and well, and Krishna consciousness was being distributed by the mercy of Narottama Das Thakur. So I've got a couple of minutes. So his life was just so full. Radhanath Swami, on one of his appearance days, spoke for 5 hours on... You heard it, you were 6 hours, you listened to it, right? So there was a lot to talk about. So because it's his appearance, I'm talking about the early part of his life, and then the disappearance, there is another sort of wonderful aspect there. But one story that I want to relate here, I've got a couple of minutes, was that Narottama Das Thakur, he had a very close friend, like it said here, Ramachandra. They were sort of inseparable, actually, and Ramachandra was a disciple of Srinivas. So one day they were walking along the path on their preaching track, and they saw 2 boys there, teenage boys, and they were herding a lot of goats and buffalo, and they knew that there was a Durga Puja going on, and they were going to be slaughtered for sacrifice to the goddess Durga, because according to the understanding of all those people who worship Goddess Durga, they say that Goddess Durga likes flesh to be she likes to eat flesh, so they offer goats and buffalo. So these boys were the son of this wealthy acharya called Shivananda, and Narottama and Ramachandra, they had compassion not only for the goats and the buffalo, but for the boys also who were doing that. Taken them there, so they began to just talk loudly about Krishna's pastimes as the boys went past, and the boys were very nice boys, and they become attractive. What are you talking about? And then they saw these effulgent personalities, Narottama and Ramachandra, and they started to listen, and they got the message that Krishna was the all-powerful, almighty, all-loving, merciful God, and that their life was being wasted by taking these animals to be slaughtered and worshipping Goddess Durga, and Krishna was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So they said, what do we do? What do we do? And Narottama says, let the animals go. Go and take a bath in the river and come back. and they did. They took a bath in the Padmavati, and they come back and they were initiated as the disciples of Narottama. Father wasn't very happy about that, So what happened? What did you do? No, we let the animals go. What? What happened? We found Narottama there, and we've actually switched to Vaishnavism. We don't worship Lord Shiva anymore. He became so enraged. What is this? This philosophy is bogus. So he really became angry, and he got this pundit to come and straighten the boys out. One of these smarter brahmanas, teach them the philosophy. They've been hypnotized. So this pundit come along, and the boys had been empowered by Narottama Das Thakur, and they defeated every argument that this pundit put forward. Right? He couldn't beat them. They were strong Vaishnavas. So then all the words start to get out that this Narottama Das Thakur is actually converting a lot of the brahmanas, and it goes back to the fact that he was a Vaishya. How could a Vaishya convert the brahmanas? So they threw in that caste distinction. They didn't really consider the fact that someone was spiritually enlightened. And of course Lord Chaitanya said, Kibra Vipra, Kibra Nasa, Kibra, whoever you are, whatever, if you chant the holy name of Krishna, you're the most exalted person in the universe. So then they arranged they went to the king and said, this Narottama is hypnotizing, he's putting spells on all these brahmanas, and they're all taking shelter of him. The whole system's being disturbed. So then they summoned this Digvijaya Pandit, Rupa Narayan. Digvijaya is the sort of supreme Pandit, you can't be beaten, right? All sort of undefeatable Brahman from somewhere. And he come along and said, okay, we'll take this Narottama Das on, and we'll actually reveal reveal him to be who he is. So the king actually went with Rupa Narayan. They had a whole entourage. They were heading up to Katuri. And as they were going on, the Digvijaya that sort of defeat all the pundits or whatever. And Ramachandra and his friend, they heard about this, that they were coming, and they didn't want them to disturb Narottama with all this big fanfare and all this sort of brouhaha, whatever. So they devised a plan. They went to this village which was on the path to Katuri, and they set themselves up as pot salesmen in a marketplace. So just there, who wants to buy a pot for the jagya? Anyone want to buy a pot for jagya? And then of course there was the brahmanas there in the king's entourage, and they needed some pots. So they were dressed in Sanskrit. Who wants to buy a pot in Sanskrit? And the brahman said, what? Who's these pot sellers selling pots in Sanskrit? Right, so they came over, they were curious, and then they had a little bit of a sort of tit for tat, a bit of a debate, and they got humbled by these two pot sellers who could speak Sanskrit fluently, and anything they said, they philosophically wiped them off the table, right? And so they come back to Rupa Narayan, and Rupa Narayan said, what is this? Let me see for myself. So he went over and he started to debate with Ramachandra in Sanskrit, and he was completely defeated also. So the king saw this, and they said, who are you? Who are you guys? He said, we're disciples of Narottama Das Thakur. So they concluded that if these are the disciples of Narottama Das Thakur, just imagine the potency of Narottama himself. So then they gave up their mentality, and I don't know if Goddess Durga appeared to Shivananda, said that you're wrongly criticising your sons, but they actually surrendered to Narottama. From that place, wherever that was, they left all the elephants and all the all the sort of whatever they had, the whole entourage behind, and they just simply walked to Katuri, and then they took shelter of Narottama Das's feet, and they become his disciples. So this was the potency of Narottama, that he had so much of a profound influence, And we just sang that song in the morning. There's a dozen songs in the songbook, and all his songs are really beautiful. And he's one of the most influential Vaishnavas that we have in our Sampradaya today, so it's very nice to glorify him on this appearance day. Thank you very much for listening. I've got 10 seconds for a comment, or minus 1 minute.
I told you that festival was Gorpanim, right?
Gorpanim.
Yes.
Was it Gorpanim?
Yeah, it was the very first Gorpanim.
Right. Thank you for telling me that. I wasn't aware of that. Gorpanim's coming up. Jai. So we know what first Gorpanim was. Amazing. Can't repeat that, but anyway, we can try. All glories to Narottama Dasa, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Ki Jai.